Hi, I'm Jed Grant, CEO of KYC3. I'd like to share with you a short thought about getting over the business versus compliance argument, how to talk about risk with the business, and how to do it in a way that makes perfect sense from a perspective of improving the customer experience. Without customers, what is a business? Improving the risk reduction so that you get more business for a lower level of risk or the same level of risk, and generating cost savings in that risk assessment function so that you can flow through those benefits to the bottom line. If we look at the traditional view of risk management that we're all familiar with, it's inherent risk plus minus controls leaves you with a residual risk, and that's your risk appetite, ideally, if your controls are designed properly. If we look at how those things stack up, according to the Wolfsburg Group and how they decide that you should or recommend that you should do this, you look at the inherent risk sources coming from clients, products, countries, channels, other aspects, and you look at the controls that you can put in place in terms of governance, policies, due diligence, reporting, record keeping, etc. And then you're left with your residual risk, which you can decide to take certain actions against, or you can accept it as part of your risk appetite. But if we take a different view, so the business view of risk, which is the way I prefer to look at it, we have the products and services times the markets and channels times the customers. And that equals our business. If we go back, this stack, inherent risk, actually is the business. So when we look at that, if you look at what business is and what it is doing, business is risk for reward. And the aim of the business is to increase these variables as much and as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, if we increase these without restraint and without any controls and without abandon, with total abandon, we'll end up with too much risk potentially, which leads to accidents, unintended consequences, possibly disaster. I mean, obviously, regulatory agencies were created because businesses had taken too much risk. Initially, it was the case that customer assets held in custody would disappear because the business took too much risk, and then later on in the late 80s, as we saw the Colombian drug lords move into the cocaine business and become a real problem for law enforcement, the anti-money laundering risk, and even after that, the counter-terrorist financing efforts became more and more important. So these are the types of risks that can impact the business. We're not talking about stubbing a toe. I mean, dealing with organized crime and terrorists is something no business should want to do. So if you look at it from that perspective of the business is the products and services times the markets and channels times the customers, and the business is risk, well, then you have this issue of how do we apply some risk management so that we can reduce the risk and keep the same amount of business. So by adopting risk management, we lower the risk of the business, but we keep the same or more amounts of products, services, markets, channels, and customers, giving us the same amount of business. So how much do we have to pay the denominator in order to do that, to deliver? Where is that balance that's going to work to deliver the right risk management for the business? So the aim is to maximize the denominator of the equation and do that as efficiently as possible. So the internal controls and external controls times the automation is how I like to look at the denominator in this updated risk equation, and one that I think is easier for business to understand because it's very clear that the business is on top and the risk management is on bottom as a factor to minimize the total amount of risk. It's not minimizing the business. The goal is to minimize the risk for the business you get out. So your internal and external controls should be as efficient as possible. In this regard, throwing people at those and creating manual processes is about the least efficient thing you can do. Digital automation is what's known in the military as a force multiplier. So a force multiplier means you get to multiply your forces using automation. So this is really where everybody needs to strive for. So if you look at it, risk managers doing manual risk controls and audits, using checklists, procedures, Excels, filing documents, manually writing reports, this is not where you want to go. You want to leverage digital automation. You want to implement and supervise an automated risk management system. You want risk managers who know their job, who understand technology, and who can deliver an automated risk management system that requires obviously supervision and testing to have empirical proof that it is working, but you can automate and multiply your forces in order to deliver much more efficient risk management so that that denominator becomes the most cost efficient one you can get to reduce your risk, and your business can grow as much as possible for a minimum amount of risk. So if you look at that, there has to be a better way to do this, and it is possible to do that, to have a great investor experience, avoid fines, and boost the bottom line. Most companies fail because the business on top fails to take that holistic approach of the whole equation and the relationship between the numerator and the denominator in there, and the compliance and risk teams are overwhelmed with complicated assessments, manual processes, and so forth. They don't have time, and oftentimes they also lack the know-how to do a digitalization effort and to automate the processes. So who are we, and are we a good fit? KYC3 is a specialist in digital compliance automation, and we're focused on alternative finance that's looking to digitize the entire compliance process, but maybe struggling with the complexity and technical challenges of integrating everything together in a reasonable time frame and within budget constraints. We're totally focused on the specificities of alternative investment, private equity, wealth management, and virtual asset service providers. So if you want to learn more, please check out the full-length video where I can explain our entire process and approach, and take our assessment quiz to see if you're a good fit and get a price. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks for your attention.